indicate. In this launch window, which we're currently 26 minutes into, and it's 2 hours long, it runs until 3:04 a.m. Eastern Time, we have what's called 40 cutouts. And in those cutouts, they range from about a second to about a minute. These are times where they can't launch. These cutouts must be accounted for when determining a new T0. The upper stage of the rocket, which was the last to get ready and configured, just recently the team cycled the liquid hydrogen valves, which is required, and they are currently working on the LO2 valves, liquid oxygen valves in the upper stage. That work is almost done. We are now a minute and a half away from the poll of the mission management team, which is several minutes before T-minus 15 minutes. When that poll starts, we'll get a clearer picture of our T0. NASA's test director has informed the launch team to all switch to a common communication channel. It's called 232.
那么现在大约是美国东部时间的11月16日凌晨1点多，在肯尼迪航天中心的平台。发射窗口呢是为2小时，那么这一次是绕月飞行测试，不载人。它是为这个阿尔忒弥斯2号的载人绕月以及阿尔忒弥斯3号的载人登月做准备。那么美国 NASA 的顶石任务运行小组也是证实，顶石号月球探测器呢是于北京时间的2022年11月14日的7点39分，12U 的 C 立方星完成一次初始的入轨行动。
There are currently no constraints to launch. Great news. Again, no constraints to launch. And they're getting ready to pick up with a poll to determine.
现在的一个好消息是，据说所有的发射问题都已被排除。
3点多，对。
那就是我们还要再等。
可是它不是原来说是2点04分吗？
对，就是
这个是怎么算出来的？
应该是算的是距离最近的那个，就是2个天体距离最近的那个时候，这样的话发射比较容易。
哎呀，我觉得3点钟能飞也蛮好的。
哪个是月球？如果是个什么其他行星的话，就是。
Okay, NASA test director Jeff Spalding getting ready to conduct the readiness poll, so we are getting close. We're going to pull up the audio now so that you can listen in.
Please go. And rockets go. All right, copy all. And Launch Director NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
I copy all NTD. At this time, I will proceed with my poll. And attention on 232, this is the Launch Director performing the final poll for launch. Verify no constraints and go for launch. EGS, Program Chief Engineer.
EGS Program Chief Engineer, verifies that the EGS, SLS, and Orion Program Chief Engineers have no constraints and are go for launch.
Copy, Greg. Thank you. EGS Chief Safety Officer.
The EGS CSO verifies the SLS, Orion, and EGS CSOs have no constraints and are go for launch.
Copy, John. Thank you. Range weather.
Weather has no constraints and weather is go for launch.
Copy, LWO and Mission Manager. And Mission Manager, Launch Director.
Launch Director, Mission Manager on 232. The mission management team has been pulled. You have a go to proceed with terminal count and launch of Artemis 1.
I copy all. Thank you. And NTD, Launch Director.
Go ahead, Launch Director.
Yes, sir. On behalf of all the men and women across our great nation who have worked to bring this hardware together to make this day possible, and for the Artemis generation, this is for you. At this time, I give you a go to resume count and launch Artemis 1.
准备好继续进行倒计时。
We have a couple of steps to configure, and then we will be ready to resume the clock. CVSE, NTD.
CVSE here.
Initiate recording of Orion cameras at this time.
In work.
NTD.
继续查看的是诸如一些硬件设施是否运作正常。
NDT, RSR, booster ignition, SNA, arm, and rotation enable is complete.
And I copy. Thank you.
Okay, so there you heard the poll from Launch Director.
Really?
Getting ready to get that new T0 time. The poll that you heard was the NASA Test Director's poll. And
all right, and we have verified no cutouts at this time. And all personnel, we are going to resume the clock. GLS, you can resume the clock on your mark.
GLS copies. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. GLS mainline has been initiated.
okay,
T-minus 10 minutes and counting.
we are T-minus 10 minutes away from liftoff of Artemis 1. As you can see, the clock is now moving. Let's put that up.
现在
T-minus 9 minutes and 47
10分钟
seconds.
的倒计时重新开始。
Poll
Right,
complete.
show
They went
06:47:44 is the new liftoff time.
Affirm.
Okay.
Oh 1:47:44, 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time and 44 seconds.
“现在是美国的东部时间的凌晨1点45分左右，那么距离这个 SLS 的发射大约倒计时9分钟。
Liftoff now 9 minutes away. So terminal count. Control has been given over to the GLS, the ground launch sequencer, a computer and software that is doing all of the commanding and monitoring of the Space Launch System. We'll hear call-outs from the GLS operator, Alex Pandalos. As well as NASA Test Director Jeff Spaulding. GLS is pre-tensioning the umbilicals at this very moment. You can see them as they run down the rocket. That's getting them ready to detach. At liftoff, those arms will swing away, will let go of the rocket in a clockwise direction.
那么这个阿尔忒弥斯1号的任务时长大约是在25天11小时和36分左右的这个时间。如果今天顺利发射的话呢，猎户座飞船预计是在2022年的12月11日会降落在这个圣地亚哥海岸，整个航程大约有210万公里。 阿尔忒弥斯1号任务呢，将是 NASA 首次对深空探索系统进行的一个综合测试。那么这个系统呢，是包括了这个猎户座飞船、太空发射系统火箭，以及位于美国佛罗里达州肯尼迪航天中心的一个地面系统。那么作为一系列复杂难度逐级递增当中的一个呢，这个阿尔忒弥斯1号任务呢，将是一次无人飞行的测试，它将为人类深空探索奠定一个基础，同时呢，也是展示人类生存扩展到月球以及更远地区的一个承诺和能力。
我们现在看到的这个就是，刚才有打开成员舱内外的这个摄像机，确保能够记录下照片和视频，以及现在正在使用这个听到的这个声音是用高速的氮气去冲击增压器，以免里面还有残留的氢气。
At T-minus 17 seconds. Now coming up in less than 30 seconds, the ground launch sequencer will start bringing the high energy systems online, starting with core stage pressurization. Fire room 1 is completely silent.
现在可以看到，它的这个发射台其实是没有进行减震的，这样的一个设置的。所以说，在火箭点火期间，以及它发出的这种巨大的声音，可能会对这个机体本身造成损害。但是也是使用了用水，用灌满水的这样的方式来减轻声音、噪音和这种震动造成的损伤。
The launch abort system, or LAS jettison motor, is now armed. On this flight, the abort motor is inactive because there is no crew on board. Up next is the flight termination system, or FTS, which gives the Space Force the ability to destruct the rocket if it goes in the wrong direction. Let's listen in for that.
GLS is go for FTS arm.
The flight termination system is now armed. Coming up at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, a big moment. This is where the RS-25 engines and their bleed go to high flow. It's been a little tricky to dial in.
GLS is go for LH2 high flow bleed check.
Good word, we've passed that.
终止系统也已经启动了，因为现在这个火箭上已经没有机组工作人员了。
They are now at the right temperature for launch. Countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 15 seconds. Up next, GLS fires up the K-POOs. Those are high-speed turbines which provide pressure to hydraulic pumps that steer the RS-25.
这个终止逃逸系统就是当发射出现任何问题的时候，在上面的成员可以迅速的逃逸至安全区域的装置。
Vector control test at T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That can proceed now, and we will see the engines gimbal at the bottom of the core stage.
那么据说在今天的这个发射前的3小时呢 ，SLS 是又出现了一个液氢泄漏的问题。那么当时为了解决这个问题呢，这个指挥他是下令派遣了一个抢险队进入到 LC-39B 的这个拧紧活动发射平台上的这个阀门螺栓进行一个修复。
现在听到的这个轰轰的声音，就是用大剂量的这个氦气去持续冲刷4个RS-25发动机当中所含有的残留的空气或者是湿气。
And there it goes, it's closed. LOX vent closed. Pressure rising in the core stage LOX tank to flight levels. Coming up in 15 seconds, look for that thrust vector control actuator test. Engines will gimbal.
看到的这个白色的烟雾，其实就是由极低温度的这个液氧所造成的。它将这个空气当中的水蒸气冷凝。
2 million pounds, altogether with the boosters, 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
GLS go for upper stage to internal power.
Now the upper stage has gone to internal power.
现在已经上锁。
So power is removed from the rocket's upper stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery power.
新级的压力已经抬升至可以飞行的水平。
At T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds.
GLS go for core stage to internal power.
The rocket's core stage, which houses the 3 flight computers, is now on battery power. So there is no more hold time available because there's no more margin on the batteries. So if we have a hold, we'd have to recycle back to T-minus 10 minutes and recharge those batteries.
现在这个电源已经从外部电源转接到内部电源了。所以说所以这个星级现在在靠的是内部电源来供电。接下来的话，我们就不会再出现像刚才那样的暂停时间了，因为如果再暂停的话，就需要重新为电池充电，这样的话需要再一次倒计时10分钟。
On board the rocket, it will take over command and control of the rocket. But the ALS will check, make sure there's no holds coming from the ground up until T-minus 2 seconds.
Go for ALS.
And we are go for ALS.
在升空之后，控制权就会由这个地面控制转变为这个火箭上的这个自动控制器。
Sound suppressor water now flowing under the ML. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1.
现在我们看到的是氢气燃料点燃，以及4个发动机启动。
RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour.
现在我们的这个4个发动机和它的2个固体火箭助推器正在使这个火箭以每小时120英里的速度高速飞行。
Traveling 607 miles per hour.
现在的速度已经达到了600英里每小时。通过最大空气动压。现在飞行速度时速已经达到了1420英里每小时。接下来的我们将会关注的下一个关键的节点就是主引擎切断。
Standing by for solid rocket booster jettison and shortly thereafter.
我们为之后的这个固体 火箭推进器分离做好准备，现在已经分离了。
Now the core stage continues to power the flight of Orion, all 4 RS-25 engines firing, traveling over 3,400 miles per hour, 46 miles downrange.
现在还是使用这个新级的4台 RS-25 发动机进行飞行。现在的时速达到了3400英里每小时。
Next up, we'll be looking for the service module fairing to separate. This is 3 15 by 15 foot fairing panels, providing structural support, protecting the service module. Those will separate at about 3 minutes.
接下来我们在等待的就是这个整流罩的分离阶段。整流罩的整体结构是为了保护服务舱而存在的。
60 miles per hour, 83 miles downrange.
接下来还有接下来还有终止逃逸系统分离。
And that the launch abort system pyros have fired, separating those from Orion as well. For future crew members.
现在他们已经与猎户座分离了。
We just heard the call for 3-engine press, meaning if SLS were to lose an engine at this point in the mission, we could still achieve a nominal mission. We would just have an extended main engine cutoff time. However, we still have 4 good engines, all at maximum thrust right now, powering the first flight of Artemis.
台的信息中断是因为失去了有一个引擎已经失去了作用。但是完成任务不会受什么影响。现在4个引擎还是处在最大推力的状态中。
So far, we've had a clean ascent. We saw those solid rocket boosters jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds after liftoff. Shortly after, we had the service module panels fairings separate, as well as the launch abort system. The launch abort system was inert for this flight, except to perform this separation.
已经成功看到了助推器以及整流罩和这个终止逃逸系统的成功分离。
Now traveling over 6,800 miles per hour, 229 miles downrange.
而新级将继续为阿尔特弥斯的飞行持续提供助力。现在的时速已经达到了6800英里每小时。
Our core stage main engine cutoff time is about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. We are now at 5 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, 7,656 miles per hour. Again, 4 good core stage engines, those 4 RS-25 engines.
新级的4个 RS-25 发动机还是运转良好的。
5 minutes, 42 seconds into the mission, we are now traveling 8,800 miles per hour, 345 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. Again, we are anticipating core stage main engine cutoff at about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. And about 10 seconds later, we'll see core stage separation, at which point Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will be flying free. Now traveling over 10,000 miles per hour, 6 minutes and 15 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1, 427 miles downrange. Quiet here on the loops in Mission Control Houston. Teams continue to monitor this first flight.
刚才的应该是这4个引擎应该是都没有问题的，只是说他应该说的是，如果在根据刚才的数据表示，现在引擎内部的数据可以承担说，哪怕有一个引擎失去作用，也是可以继续进行的。所以说现在4个引擎应该都是在运作良好的状态。
Coming up on 7 minutes since launch today, now traveling over 12,800 miles per hour, 563 miles downrange. Again, still quiet here in Mission Control Houston.
现在还有1分多钟，我们就会迎来关键性的下一个阶段，就是主引擎切断阶段。现在引擎在熄火，准备降速。
Now 7 minutes 45 seconds into the flight, traveling over 16,000 miles per hour. Continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston. We're standing by for core stage main engine cutoff.
接下来等待的就是这个心急的主引擎切断，然后4个引擎会持续的减速。现在的报告称，主引擎已经成功切断。
The next milestone will be solar array deploy approximately 18 minutes after liftoff. But before Orion stretches its wings, let's check back in with our friends at Kennedy Space Center and hear all about what it was like to hear the rocket roar off the launch pad. Megan and Kayla,
现在的话，已经是成功分离了。接下来我们需要，接下来的下一个节点就是18分钟之后的太阳能电池板部署阶段。
As Leah said, I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. And I'm kind of still giddy and speechless. I don't even know how to explain how I'm feeling right now.
I feel the same way. This is the first launch that I've been able to watch in person. And I've got to say, it was incredible. It took my breath away, and I was tearing up. Just what an amazing accomplishment for this team. This international team, people who have been dedicating their careers to getting this rocket off the ground and taking the first step to getting a crew on that vehicle back to the moon.
那么今天终于在这个阿尔特米斯1号被这个延迟了那么多次以后，今天终于在肯尼迪航天中心发射升空。在当地时间的美国当地时间的11月16日的凌晨，也就是我们北京时间的下午3点不到的时间呢，这个美国登月火箭太空发射系统 SLS 是在肯尼迪航天中心终于发射升空，携带猎户座飞船执行阿尔特米斯1号任务。
million pounds of thrust.
Yes.
It's incredible. It was amazing to see here live in person.
How does it compare? So this is your first launch on the ground. How does it compare to your launch when you're in the capsule soaring towards space?
I mean, equally emotional, I think. We train for everything, and so when we're in that capsule waiting for launch, we're just running our procedures. You could almost, trick us and say that we were in the simulator and it wasn't real, but like in that moment of liftoff, when the thrust builds underneath you, like we saw it today, it's just hard not to be overwhelmed by the emotional experience, the excitement, the joy.
那么更加准确的时间呢，是在北京时间的今天14时的47分 ，NASA 太空发射系统 SLS 是携带阿尔特米斯1号的猎户座飞船发射升空。那么此次首飞的这个猎户座飞船呢，是搭载了约54公斤的设备，包括3名模拟的宇航员。那么模拟的宇航员呢，将装有这个传感器，收集前往月球辐射等等多种数据，也是为今后这个载人飞行呢提供一个数据。那么之所以是用这个模拟宇航员呢，是因为此次的绕月飞行呢是测试，它是不载人的。那么它是为了这个阿尔特米斯2号的载人绕月和阿尔特米斯3号的载人登月做准备。NASA 呢计划通过阿尔特米斯的这个任务，将首位女性和首位有色人种是送上这个月球表面，为它长期驻留月球也通往火星呢是铺路。那么这次期待已久的发射呢，也是我们刚才提到在 多次的推迟之后才进行的。这个推迟的原因是包括这个严重预算的严重超支，还有这个飓风这个各种极端天气的影响。那么此次的这个成功发射也是标志着美国迈出重返月球的第一步。如果任务成功呢，美国航天局最早将于2024年开展阿尔忒弥斯2号的载人绕月飞行任务，并且在最后呢是进行这个阿尔忒弥斯3号的一个登月任务。
After a whole lot of hard work and preparation to get to this moment, let's stand by and listen to her now.
Com check. But you can't hear it in the room. Can you guys hear me? No. I can hear me, but the room can't. You can hear me? Because the guys.
那么原定呢，今天阿尔忒弥斯1号是在北京时间14时4发射呢。那么最终它的发射时间呢是定格在了14时47。那么此前呢也是有这个声称有这个技术上的问题，也就是这个出现燃料泄漏的情况。那么这个技术员也是在第一时间在现场进行了一个维修。
Here.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Is he ready for me? Well, for once, I might be speechless. So you guys know I have talked a lot about appreciating the moment that you're in, and we have worked hard as a team. You guys have worked hard as a team for this moment. This is your moment. It is not by chance that you are here today. So I want you to look around at this team and know that you have earned it. You have earned your place in the room. You have earned this moment. You have earned your place in history. You were part of a first. Doesn't come along very often. Once in a career, maybe. But we are all part of something incredibly special, the first launch of Artemis. The first step in returning our country.
那么现在呢，也是所谓的这个高光时刻，那么相当于是发表一个相当于是获奖感言的这样一个终于发射的一个现场的一个感言。那么其实美国想重返月球呢，它并非是心血来潮之举。早在这个21世纪初呢，美国当时就提出了一个重返月球的一个星座计划。但是呢，在相当长的一段时间里呢 ，NASA 一直是在月球和火星这两个目的地之间摇摆，因为他们无法确定究竟是先载人登陆火星呢，还是再次重返月球。与此同时呢 ，NASA 也无法承受同时开展两个项目所需要的这个巨额开支。那么2010年呢，美国前总统奥巴马是取消了重返月球的计划，突出强调这个他认为前往火星更加的重要。不过呢，在航天界呢，支持 这个重返月球，甚至是建立月球基地的是大有人在。所以当时的研究的这个飞船呢，也被保留了下来，成为了今天阿尔特米斯计划中的这个猎户座飞船。那么自从特朗普当选美国总统之后呢，为了凸显与奥巴马的不同呢，他把重返月球置于更加重要的一个位置。那么阿尔特米斯计划呢，也在特朗普当选总统后不久就得以启动。那么在拜登政府上台之后呢，阿尔特米斯计划是被稳步的推进。因此呢，这个美国重返月球的计划呢，也是进一步的在落实的过程当中。从历史上看呢，这个耗资巨大的阿波罗计划呢，当时虽然没有带来直接的经济效益，但是对美国的科技界和工业界是产生了长期的积极的影响。同时呢，以这个 SpaceX， 也就是太空探索公司，为代表的这个商业航天蓬勃发展的背景下呢，这个拓宽航天商业路径，开发这个外星球的资源，也成为一个更加有前途的议题。因此呢，美国政府也是不甘落后。
Talk to the team, and one thing that really stuck out to me that she said is that they really earned their place in history. We're coming up on solar array deploy. Let's go on to Leah.
Thanks, Megan. And yes, we're here in Mission Control Houston, still monitoring the Artemis 1 mission and the first flight of Orion atop the Space Launch System.
在2020年的5月15日呢，时任 NASA 的局长吉姆布里登斯廷呢，当时公布了一个协定。那么这个协定呢，是以1967年生效的外层空间条约为基础，是规定了关于和平利用月球、火星和其他天体的原则。截至2022年的7月，有超过20个国家是签署了这个协定。这些国家呢，将根据这个阿尔特米斯协定呢，与美国在阿尔特米斯计划中进行不同程度的合作。
These will provide power to the spacecraft on its journey to distant retrograde orbit and all the way back to Earth. Once these are properly configured, again, Orion will no longer need to rely solely on battery power. And we expect this to be done about 30 minutes after liftoff. Right now, we're 19 minutes since liftoff today. Orion is now traveling 17,175 miles per hour. We're continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston from the flight controllers monitoring the mission. A little bit about these solar arrays as we wait. Again, we heard the call that the deploy has been initiated. We'll hear a little bit more about that once they start to unfold. These 4 solar arrays generate 11 kilowatts of power, which is enough electricity to power 2 3-bedroom houses, and they have a wingspan of 63 feet. Just one of these 6.5 by 6.5 foot panels has 1,250 solar cells, so you're looking at a total of 15,000 solar cells. Now, we just heard the call that all 4 solar arrays have been released. So we initially heard the initiation call. That command had been sent. Now those 4 solar arrays are released. Again, this is about a 12-minute process.
那么这次发射阿尔特米斯1号的任务呢，是 NASA 深空探测系统首次的综合飞行测试。那么这个系统呢，包括美国为深空任务设计的下一代飞船猎户座、NASA 登月火箭 SLS 和肯尼迪航天中心的地面系统。它主要的目标呢，是包括在太空飞行环境中去展示猎户座飞船系统，并确保安全重返大气层、下降、降落以及回收。
Of course, if you recall the Apollo capsule design, there were no solar arrays. We had fuel cells instead. So this design with arrays.
那么刚才呢，我们也是在直播当中提到，当这个火箭与飞船分离，猎户座飞船呢将依靠临时的低温推进剂前往月球。那么当这个猎户座的飞船绕地球轨道飞行，并部署及太阳能电池板的时候呢，这个临时的一个低温推进剂，也就是这个 ICPS 会为它提供离开地球轨道飞向月球所需要的巨大推力，从而引导这个猎户座靠近 靠近到足以被月球引力捕获的这样一个程度。那么在这个发射大约2小时之后呢，猎户座飞船会与这个 ICPS 分离，随后呢，这个 ICPS 部署这个10颗立方星。那么此时呢，这个猎户座飞船将继续从地球轨道前往月球轨道。猎户座的这个距离月球表面最近的时候的距离只有大约97公里，然后呢，利用这个月球引力进入一个远距离的逆行轨道。到那个时候呢，它距离月球的距离大约是6.4万公里。那么 NASA 也表示呢，这是迄今为止在人类建造的宇宙飞船在太空当中最远的一次这个飞行距离。阿尔忒弥斯1号的此次任务的总的飞行里程呢，会达到210万公里。那么任务呢将持续约26天。那么猎户座飞船呢，在太空停留的时间呢，也是比任何一艘之前没有与空间站对接的人类宇宙飞船都要长。最终呢，飞船预计于12月11号降落在这个太平洋。在返回地球的旅程当中呢，猎户座飞船将再次利用月球的引力，将在准确的时间点燃发动机，利用这个月球引力加速返回地球，以大约4万公里每小时的速度进入地球的这个大气层。当飞船顺利进入大气层之后呢，它将依靠降落在圣地亚哥的这个海岸着陆。着陆呢和回收小组将负责太空舱降落之后的一个安全回收。那么此次阿尔忒弥斯1号的任务呢，也携带了10颗立方星。那么这些立方星的尺寸呢，其实跟这个我们平时的鞋盒子穿鞋的这个盒子相比呢，也大不了多少。那么届时他们将沿途研究月球或是前往一个深空的目的地。不仅如此呢 ，NASA 还计划在月球轨道开发绕月空间站，被称之为一个月球门户，并利用这个 SLS 的火箭或者是商业火箭的发射组件在太空完成组装。那么未来宇航员呢，将乘坐猎户座飞船，搭乘这个 SLS 火箭前往月球轨道。猎户座飞船呢，也会与月球门户对接，宇航员呢会转移到人类着陆系统，前往月球表面进行探索。
All 4 arrays are deployed.
现在据说是4个这个太阳能电池板列已经都部署好了。
Coming up in a little less than 30 minutes is the perigee raise maneuver.
接下来的30分钟，我们会等待的是近地点的抬升。
And with our launch at 1:41 Eastern Time this morning, we are looking for a perigee raise maneuver about 53 minutes into today's flight. Again, we are now 25 minutes and 47 seconds into the flight, and we have a complete deployment of all 4 solar arrays. Orion's journey to the moon continues as planned. Again, looking forward to that perigee raise maneuver. That'll be coming up again at about 53 minutes into the mission, so about 27 minutes from now. During the perigee raise maneuver, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will use its RL-10 engine to lift the lowest point of Orion in Earth's orbit. The current orbit is more of an oval shape than a perfect circle, and this burn will raise that point.
我们现在接下来要等待的这个近地点抬升，就是使用的这个RL 发动机来提升我们的这个猎户座飞船和地球轨道上的这个最低点，也就是我们所谓的近地点。这一个现在的轨道是是一个近似椭圆形的，而现在还不是一个完美的圆形。接下来的这一次点火就会提升近地点轨道，然后使我们的飞行轨道更加趋于一个完美的圆形。
We caught a glimpse there of those solar arrays, and with all 4 solar arrays properly deployed, Orion's journey to the moon continues, and we've got more operational updates coming up shortly, but for now, I'm going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
Leah, thank you so much. Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and learn how to live and work there. With more on our destination,
以及再重复一下，就是我们的这个有4个太阳能电池阵列已经成功展开了。
That never gets old. That is always one of the coolest things you'll ever see in your entire life. And that rocket was massive and loud and just so cool. All right, the moon. This is why we call it the moon board. But the moon, you know, since the dawn of time, humans have looked at the sky and shouted at our neighbor, "I'm going to walk in your face." And in the 60s, we actually did it. 6 times, starting with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, 1969, followed by 5 more successive landings, each time delivering 2 human beings to the surface of the moon. Our last one was Apollo 17, and that was in 1972, Gene Cernan and Harrison Smith stepping off for the last time. Now, we have not sent humans back since then, but they accomplished a lot under Apollo. Lots of technological advancements, deployed science instruments, brought back hundreds of pounds of lunar rocks and regolith, teaching us about the moon and also about our place in the solar system. The moon is fascinating because it doesn't have a lot of the geological processes we have here on Earth. You don't have erosion, you don't have wind and water wearing down rocks, you don't have plate tectonics that are constantly recycling the crust. And so everything out there is really old. In fact, one of the rocks brought back on Apollo 15, called the Genesis rock, was dated to be 4 billion years old. So from the primordial beginnings of our solar system. But as Kayla said a little bit earlier, those missions were measured in days, their spacewalks in just hours. With Artemis, we're looking to go and we're looking to stay. And we're not looking around the equator like under Apollo. We're looking at the lunar South Pole. Now, why? So we haven't sent people since the 70s to the moon, but we haven't stopped studying it. We've had orbiters like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which has literally just been flying loops around the moon, taking high-resolution images of the surface, so high resolution that you can look them up. They have images of all the different Apollo landing sites, and you can actually see the footprints, the paths they left in the lunar regolith of those sites. We had a mission called L-Cross, which slammed a probe into a crater on the moon, sending out material, some of which potentially hadn't seen direct sunlight for billions of years, and then analyzing what shot out. And through missions like that and others, we've been able to find that there is water ice trapped in those permanently shadowed areas on the moon. A lot of them center around that South Pole. We have already identified 13 potential landing sites for the Artemis 3 mission. And these are where we're going to send our astronauts around the lunar South Pole to access that water ice. Now, why water? Why are we caring about water? Well, it serves a lot of purposes. Obviously, for humans, you need that to breathe. You can split water apart, get oxygen for breathing gas for an atmosphere. If you have a lunar base, you can split it into oxygen and hydrogen. That's rocket fuel. We just launched the most powerful rocket in history using those constituent parts. And so you can start to live off the land. We can use that, something called in situ resource utilization. And really, the whole point of that is to use the moon as this proving ground. We're trying to get to Mars. We're trying to learn to live on other planets where there is gravity, where we're going to have to use resources there on the ground because we won't be able to bring everything with us. And by going to the lunar South Pole, by going to stay under Artemis, we're going to be able to start practicing that. We're going to perfect those systems, perfect those techniques and operations we need to do that so we can use the moon as that jumping off point to Mars and beyond. So that's why the moon. We're going to see Orion fly around it for the very first time in just a couple of days. That launch was spectacular. I'm still way too excited, but can't wait to see some shots of the moon from up close from Orion. So I'll send it back over to you, Megan.
Thanks so much, Stan. So right now we're actually joined by members of the Red Crew. You'll remember from watching the launch coverage that the Red Crew was sent out by the launch team when the launch team identified a small leak on a hydrogen valve inside of the mobile launcher. Well, now here they are. This is Trent Annis. Trent, can you just introduce everybody else here on your team?
Yeah, so this is Chad. He's our safety guy. And behind me is Billy. And he's the experienced hydrogen tech out here.
And the three of you guys really, I would say, saved the day today. I mean, really, you guys had to go in there to what's called the blast danger zone. You guys are specially trained to be able to do operations on the pad while cryo is loading. Talk to us about getting that call, being told, hey, you guys need to go in there. And it was the first time for all three of you.
Yeah, all I could say is we were very excited. I was ready to get up there and go.
Really? How are you guys feeling?
Very, very comfortable, very confident in the test team and the procedures and our training. We did a great job.
Walk us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How gratifying it must be for you guys, because you train for this eventuality, but don't always get to do it. Billy was saying that he's been a Red Crew team member for 37 years, and this is the first time he's been called to go into the blast danger zone. So I know for us, when we're training for all of these eventualities, whether it's a spacewalk or robotics operations, you really want to put that training into practice. How do you guys feel like it went today?
Amazing. I still can't believe it. It's surreal to me. It's just insane.
Yeah, kind of walk us through what you were thinking. So you get there, and what is it? Just like game time, and you're really focused, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'd say we were very focused on what was happening up there, just making sure we knew what was happening. Because the rocket's, it's alive, it's creaking, it's making venting noises. It's pretty scary. So on zero deck, my heart was pumping. My nerves were going, but yeah, we showed up today. I think as soon as we walked up those stairs, we were ready to rock and roll.
And they were telling us a bit about it while you were working on it. You guys were actually just torquing down the valve to prevent or reduce the leak rate or stop the leak. Is that right?
That's right. Just the packing gland. It was a little loose, so went up there and tightened her up.
You're probably still like in this oh my gosh moment, like all of us are. Has it actually hit you, like the role you played today in making Artemis 1 launch?
I still can't believe it. Like I said, it's surreal and just amazing. I don't know about you guys, but
they're nodding along behind you for sure. Anything you want to say to the launch team? Again, this is a big day for the launch team, for you guys, NASA, but really the whole world. I mean, this is a historic launch that I think we'll all remember. Really.
We had a lot of people here helping us out, a lot of teams, firing room. I'm sure that was hectic. And, NASA, Boeing, all the other companies did a great job, and we're glad to be part of it.
One thing I always like to say is spaceflight is a team sport, and I think you guys perfectly demonstrated that today, right? Like, none of us could accomplish this on our own. It takes a really complex team. Nobody can be an expert in all of the systems, all the technology, all of the workarounds we might have to do to get a rocket off the pad. So thank you for the role you played in that team today. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you coming by to talk with us. All right, it's now been about 35 minutes since liftoff of Artemis 1. Orion and ICPS are now free flying, so let's head back to Leah again to talk about how the journey is going so far.
现在距离 阿尔特弥斯进入太空已经35分钟了，现在已经是靠自己控制继续飞行了。
17 minutes until the perigee raise maneuver. That's going to be the maneuver that lifts the lowest point of Orion's orbit around the Earth and puts us where we need to be ahead of the translunar injection burn. The translunar injection burn is that really long burn that we're going to need to send us on to the moon.
发射之后的36分钟，我们就会进入这个近地点抬升的环节。近地点是围绕地球轨道的最低点，在这一个在合适的位置，我们会继续进行点火，将现在的椭圆形轨道进一步抬升成为完美的圆形。
The first time that we're going to be live streaming digital video from its spacecraft back down to the Earth from the vicinity of the moon. That's never been done before. What we'll be transmitting live streaming will be lower resolution, more compressed, because we have to fit it into a thinner pipe, if you will. Every one of these cameras is in its position where it is and it's configured the way it is for a very specific reason. We're going to be monitoring anything that we can see with the cameras for spacecraft performance. The imagery teams at NASA are composed of dozens and dozens of very highly trained, very specialized people, engineers, technicians, analysts. If we can see it, we're going to try and keep an eye on it. Imagery has been invaluable throughout the history of NASA. We flew cameras on Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, all of that stuff that we saw while the astronauts were on the moon. It helps us detect the unknown unknowns. It allows us to see things that we didn't anticipate happening before. So when we do fly people on Artemis 2, we can have a high confidence that everything is working the way it should.
I love getting a look at those teams that we don't normally see, like the red team that Megan and Kayla just got to interview. A really big thanks to them and everyone that made this liftoff happen tonight. So we are going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla now at KSC. Again, we're about 15 minutes away from perigee raise maneuver.
Thank you, Leah. Yeah, we wanted to take us back into Orion and talk about some of the science that's being enabled by Artemis 1 today. So inside of Orion are 10 of these. So they're called CubeSats because they're tiny satellites. Essentially, they're the size of the shoebox when they're folded down, but then once they're deployed, they're opened up. They have solar arrays, things like that. That's when it gets a lot bigger. Now, these are called secondary payloads for this mission.
各位正在收看看看新闻直播的观众，大家好。北京时间的14时的40分左右呢，NASA 是终于发射了登月火箭阿尔忒弥斯1号。那么阿尔忒弥斯1号呢，这个发射的计划呢是推迟了1年，因为各种各样的原因，天气、燃料泄漏等原因，以及经费的问题呢，这个阿尔忒弥斯1号呢，在被多次推迟之后呢，终于在今天的北京时间的下午呢，发射成功。那么 SLS 的火箭源计划呢是在今年的8月29号发射的，那么因为各种各样的原因呢多次被推迟，整个项目前后呢耗资也是近3000亿元，严重超支。但是美国航天局的高级官员呢吉米·弗里就表示呢，没有什么可以阻止这一发射计划。火箭发射团队呢是在11月10日进驻了发射中心。原本的计划发射时间呢是美国当地时间的凌晨1点04分左右，那么发射窗口期呢是为2小时。当时呢，弗里还宣布11月19日和11月25日呢是2个备选的发射日期。那么终于在今天呢是发射了。那么新一代登月火箭呢是用这个阿尔忒弥斯1号的进行这个无人绕月的飞行测试。那么这一测试呢也是美国重返月球计划的重要一步。数月以来呢，由于这个技术故障啊、飓风等因素呢，这个发射呢是已经被推迟了3次。好在呢，今天的这个发射之前的各项准备工作呢都比较顺利。
Understanding and studying the space environment
5年前的2017年的10月，美国国家航天局呢是正式公布了重返月球的阿尔忒弥斯计划。那么这个计划呢是以希腊神话中的太阳神阿波罗的姐姐，也就是月亮女神阿尔忒弥斯的名字来命名的。它的目标呢是航天员重返月球，并在月球建立永久的基地，为载人登陆火星和更加遥远的深空探测任务呢做准备。整个阿尔忒弥斯计划呢，一共是有分为3次发射。今天发射的是阿尔忒弥斯1号，它是一次无人的这个发射任务。NASA 呢是将在这个发射当中呢测试新一代的重型火箭太空发射系统 Space Launch System， 也就是 SLS。同时呢是验证这个猎户座飞船的性能和安全性。其中呢，猎户座飞船呢也将完成环绕月球的这个飞行的任务。那么阿尔忒弥斯的2号计划呢是在2024年发射，将是阿尔忒弥斯计划中的首次载人飞行。届时呢，航天员会搭乘猎户座的飞船环绕月球。那么阿尔忒弥斯的3号计划呢是不会早于2025年发射，届时呢，航天员将在阿尔忒弥斯3号的这个计划当中呢是登陆月球。
And we'll be flying a secondary payload that's a demonstration payload called Callisto. So we took the technology from Amazon for Alexa and the WebEx technology from Cisco, and so we built a digital assistant, if you will, the custom space qualified Alexa.
Alexa, how does the life support system work?
Orion's life support system is the environmental control and life support system oracles.
And so this payload is a demonstration mission to show how astronauts in the future could use this technology as an innovative user interface.
So there you have it. I hope you agree with me. This is exciting.
I am just over the moon excited for the Artemis 1 launch.
The science we'll conduct on Artemis 1 lays the groundwork to ensure that we can safely conduct scientific activities at the moon with our astronauts going forward. This really is the stepping stone for us as we take that next giant leap in space exploration.
So a lot of great science also happening on the International Space Station. I got to speak with astronauts Jessica Watkins and Samantha Cristoforetti while they were still on board about the research there that will benefit future Artemis missions. Jessica, Samantha, your primary job on the space station is to maintain the orbiting lab and conduct science experiments, more than 200 before Crew 4 returns home. Jessica, can you tell me about one of the experiments that will help return us to the moon with the Artemis program?
We do a lot of experiments where we are looking into developing new technologies that will enable us to go further into the solar system. And one of those technologies was the AstroRad experiment. Radiation is one of the challenges that we face when we think about going further into the solar system. And so this vest is an option for providing the crew member with protection. And then one of the mannequins on Artemis 1 launching here later this month will also be wearing the vest. We'll get a sense for its effectiveness on board as well.
Samantha, I know that you've been doing a lot of work to test how we would grow crops in space. What crops are you growing on space station right now, and what's unique about them?
那么现在我们看到的画面呢，也是对这个 NASA 的女性宇航员的一个采访。那么我们在今天的直播当中呢，也和大家分享过，未来的这个航天员呢，这个女性数量呢是有可能会超过男性。那么 NASA 呢，在选择女性作为航天员这件事上呢，一开始呢是很保守的态度，直到1978年呢 ，NASA 才招募了6名女性航天员。这其中呢，就有美国第一位登上太空的女性航天员萨利莱德。虽然呢，萨利莱德并不是第一位登上太空的人类女性，但她是第一个再次返回太空的人类女性。那么目前呢，女宇航员所创造的最长的这个飞行时间记录呢是188天4小时14秒。那么这位记录的保持者呢，就是美国的宇航员香农 卢西德。1996年的3月22日呢，香农卢西德是乘坐美国的亚特兰蒂斯 STS-76号宇航飞船呢抵达和平号空间站。同年的9月26日，乘坐亚特兰蒂斯 STS-79号返回地面。那么，当 NASA 接受了女性航天员之后呢，之后的事实也表明呢，女性航天员呢不仅能够完成所有的太空任务，例如说太空行走、出舱维护、常驻国际空间站，甚至在某些方面呢，女性要比男性更加适合当航天员。比如说呢，这个体型方面的优势。首先这个在我们地球上啊，女性比男性的这个个子要小，好像轻个几十斤并不是什么优势。但是这一点到了外太空就完全不一样了，因为体型小的话呢，它本身就可以很紧凑的节省这个更多的空间，而这个多出来的这部分空间呢，就可以安装更多的设施设备，甚至是更加丰富的一个生命的支持系统。而体重的大小呢是更为关键的，因为我们人类现在呢外出地球的这个主要方式呢，还是依靠非常耗能、转化率超低的这个化学燃料。那么航天器上面呢，多1斤的重量都要付出巨大的成本。例如呢，现在把1斤的货物送上空间站的成本呢是在2万美元左右。因此呢，在这个任何的太空任务当中啊，重量都是一个令人担忧的问题。所以呢，女性相比男性而言，体格更小，体重更轻，这就意味着呢，她们需要的这个火箭燃料呢也就更少了。那么，如果是一个纯女性组成的这个航天员团队呢，在多次发射中就可以节省非常大的一个成本。
But seeing a miniaturized version of those that we have up there and imagining how we could use it in a lunar or Martian laboratory to better analyze samples and decide what to bring home was really exciting.
Yeah, and you touched on this earlier before, but I do think it's just so important to note again that you're doing science for scientists who've been working on their studies for decades, some of them. So to fulfill that, how does that make you feel?
It's incredible. We're almost like their laboratory technicians for that little moment in time, you know, but they've been working their entire life, sometimes decades, years, to get that science payload up. Really unique laboratory environment. The microgravity environment, the space environment, the radiation environment, like you heard talked about in those videos, provides an opportunity to do science that we just can't do here on Earth.
Yeah, and to think that what we do on the International Space Station can fuel future Artemis missions, I think the fact that they go hand in hand is really cool. All right, so let's take some more social media questions. Social media is buzzing right now since we launched about 48 minutes ago. So why don't we take the first question, I think again from actor, oh no, let's see, Kayla, how do you feel after launch?
Super inspired. I mean, we talked about it earlier with the Red Crew and in the moments just after launch, but this is really the culmination of a giant team effort. It takes every single member of our team to pull off a successful launch. It's incredibly complicated, incredibly challenging, and in some cases kind of dangerous for a Red Crew team who went inside the blast danger area to make a fix that was critical to today's launch. And so to see the team succeed and feel that excitement was incredible.
I really still have Charlie Blackwell Thompson's words ringing in my head. The fact that she said the harder the climb, the better the view.
Absolutely.
100% correct. All right, next question is from actor Jack Black. He starred in a movie called Apollo 10 1/2. He has a question for Kayla.
Okay, Jack's final question, I promise. Let's talk about Orion. How long will it take for Orion to fly around the moon and come home? And what's that re-entry going to be like? Sounds like it might be a little hot. Coming in hot.
You're exactly right, Jack. It is a 26-day mission that we have planned for Artemis, where it will go to the moon, go into a distant retrograde orbit, so we'll get a few close flybys and then some time in deep space past the moon. And then, yeah, that re-entry is going to be something else. It's going to be 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, super hot. And so we'll be looking at how the heat shield performs just to ensure that it'll be able to protect the crew for that speed and temperature.
That's half as hot as the sun.
Yes, it's incredibly hot. So we rely on that heat shield to keep our systems and our crew safe. But we expect that it'll perform well, but we're excited to see how it does in about 26 days.
Okay. One last question from social media. What qualifications are required to become an astronaut?
You have to study STEM. You have to have a master's degree or higher in a STEM field. But besides that, we're looking for people who are awesome team players. So there's a lot of different roads to become an astronaut.
We seem to be getting a lot of questions about how people themselves can become astronauts. I think that's really cool that we might see and inspire, again, people who might think about becoming astronauts.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you, Kayla, and thank you for those who sent in those questions. We are about 50 minutes after the launch of Artemis 1, and we are approaching the next critical milestone. That's perigee raise maneuver. So let's head back over to Leah in Mission Control.
Thanks, Megan. And you're right, we are coming up on perigee raise maneuver about 2 minutes from now. We are now 51 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1 after lifting off at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time from Kennedy Space Center. The vehicle now traveling over 14,600 miles per hour. So during Orion's orbit of Earth, it reaches an apogee and a perigee. The apogee is the highest point above Earth's surface and the perigee is the lowest. Therefore, this perigee raise maneuver is a firing of the ICPS RL-10 engine, and it's going to raise the lowest point of Orion's orbit over Earth. This also included a checkout of Orion's systems and any adjustments to the solar arrays. All 4 of those solar arrays, as you can see, are swept back. That's going to keep them from having any loads imparted that might damage them for use later in the mission. This also, the perigee raise maneuver, will put us in the proper position for the translunar injection burn. That's that really big and long burn that we need to send us to the moon.
我们接下来的这一段时间需要等待的就是，首先一个是近一点抬升，然后接下来就是我们可以看到这个，太阳能电池板阵列已经都排布好了，而且它们是这样的一个向后的一个姿态，这也是为了避免在这个飞行过程当中可能会产生的损伤。然后接下来我们要等待的，接下来再要等待的就是这个地月转移轨道，进入这个地月转移轨道，然后对它进行的点火。
Coming up on 53 minutes into today's mission, and we are standing by for the start of the perigee raise maneuver. Again, this is a firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. It's less than 30 seconds long. And we have confirmation of perigee raise maneuver ignition and full thrust. This is a live view from the spacecraft.
现在这个今天的任务已经进行到了第53分钟。现在我们在等待的是这个近地点抬升。同样，我们还要等待这个临时低温推进级的点火。
Flight Dynamics Officer reporting on the loops here at Mission Control Houston that it was a good burn. We are now 54 minutes into the flight, Orion traveling 14,700 miles per hour, and that was the perigee raise maneuver, lifting the lowest part of Orion's orbit around the Earth and putting us right where we want to be for the translunar injection burn. We're looking for that translunar injection burn to happen about 1 hour and 26 minutes.
这一部分我们等待的这个近地点抬升已经成功了，接下来的大约1个小时26分钟之后，我们会迎来这个进入地月轨道转移的点火。
I hope you didn't miss it, but if you did, we have a quick replay of the launch here.
Sound suppressor water now flowing under the ML. And here we go.
现在大家看到的这个画面是发射的回放。
5, 4 stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour. Hearing good control on the roll from teams in Mission Control Houston. All good calls so far. Now 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1. First milestone will be for the vehicle to pass through max Q at about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops in mission control. The 4 core stage engines are throttling down ahead of passing.
Now to celebrate Artemis 1's successful liftoff is NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Administrator, you got to share what you just told Kayla and I. You said that that was the biggest flame you've ever seen.
That's the biggest flame I've ever seen. It's the most acoustical shock wave that I had ever experienced. We were out on the roof of the Launch Control Center, and I'm telling you, you definitely knew that there was some energy being expended over there.
So what does it mean to you to be the leader of our organization for a historic launch like this? We've been talking about the team it takes to get this done. How does it feel to be at the helm of that ship?
Well, I got to talk to the Launch Control Center team, and I said to them, you all are a part of a great legacy that has been many, many years coming, a lot of sweat and tears, and this legacy is now taking us as we explore the heavens. And it didn't end with Apollo 17, but this time we're going back and we're going to learn a lot of what we have to, and then we're going to Mars with humans.
Why is it such a priority for the agency to land the first woman and first person of color on the moon through this Artemis program?
Well, I think it's reflective of us. It's reflective of America. We are people, our Latin emblem is E pluribus unum. In the chamber of the United States Senate, over that main door is E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And so our astronaut corps reflects that. And it's going to be the first boots back on the moon are going to be the first woman and the next man.
And another goal of the Artemis program is to spur economic development. Can you talk to us about how this program has been able to do that for the
观看这个看看新闻的大家，我们今天这个也是一起完整的观看了这个由美国国家航空航天局在这个北京时间16日下午2点4分重新发射的新一代登月火箭阿尔特弥斯的成功发射。接下来刚才的火箭已经成功的完成了太阳能电池部署以及近地点的抬升。再接下来它应该就会进入这个地月轨道的环节了，地月转移轨道的环节了。那之后的信息我们也会继续更新，欢迎大家继续关注看看新闻。那我们今天就到这里啦。
Additional value that is added. I remind everybody, in everybody's pocket, they've got a cell phone, and that's got a camera, and that's a camera on a chip that came out of the NASA space program.